Hello, PLMS. Today we're going to be working with using the distributive property, combining like terms, and solving two-step equations. That is our ICANN for the day. In our first example, you can see that we want to multiply 4 times the quantity 2x minus 3, and that is all equal to 28. Anytime I see parentheses in a problem, I know that I'm going to have to get rid of those parentheses, and I'm going to have to involve multiplication in order to get rid of the parentheses by using the distributive property. But before I do that, I want to take a look inside of my parentheses, and I want to ask myself, can I combine 2x and negative 3? And we know that that is not the case, and so now we are going to distribute 4 to 2x, and we're going to call this a negative 3. So there are two terms within the parentheses. 4 times 2 gives me an 8. I'm going to bring down the x with that because it's saying 4 times 2x, which is 8x, and then 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12. Notice that I'm keeping that on the left side of the equation, and I'm lining up my equal signs. And now we are back to a two-step equation. From here, I want to isolate x, get it by itself. In this case, it's still 8x because it has a coefficient in front of it, but I want to get rid of whatever else is on that side of the equation. So I know that's a negative 12. To get rid of a negative 12, I'm going to add 12 to both sides. So I end up with 8x is equal to 40. From here, 8 times x, that's multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is to divide, and you always divide by the coefficient. The coefficient is the number in front of the variable. And you can see that was a positive 8, so I'm going to divide by 8, and I'm going to divide by 8. All that's left then on the left is x. Bring down your equal sign, and then x is equal to 5. If I were to check this answer, then I'm just going to substitute into the original equation. So I want to say that x was 5. So 2 times 5 minus 3. Well, that's going to be 4 times 10 minus 3, or 4 times 7. And of course, that does check. You don't have to check every problem, but if you feel like maybe you made an error, then that's always an option for you. Make sure you put a box or circle or something around your final answer. Check to see that your equal signs are lined up. Moving on to our next example. Once again, I want to look at the parentheses. Well, I can't combine 6 and negative r. Those two terms, are different than one another, and so I can't combine them. I know I have to get rid of the parentheses. To do that, we're going to use the distributive property. The distributive property is very generous. It wants to make sure that you are multiplying through by both or all terms within the parentheses. So I'm going to multiply negative 3 times 6. That gives me a negative 18. A negative 3 times a negative r. I'm going to look at that as a negative r. The number in front of the r, anytime I don't see a number, I know that it's a 1. So a negative 3 times a negative 1 is a positive 3, and then I bring down the r. Notice that the equal signs are lined up. And now, my friends, we are at a two-step equation. The objective is to solve for r. If I solve for r, the other term that is on the left side of the equation is a negative 18. To get rid of a negative 18, we're going to add 18. Please make sure that everything I'm writing down, you are writing down on your paper as well. So we end up with 3r is equal to 48. 3 times r is what I'm looking at. It's asking 3 times some number is equal to 48. Well, I will find out by using the opposite or inverse operation, which is division. 48 divided by 3 is 16. And you can go back and substitute that in to your original equation. So that's negative 3 times 6 minus 16. So that's negative 3 times 6 minus 16 would be a negative 10, and then that, of course, equals 30, so it does check. Give yourself a pat on the back. We did a good job on that one. Our next example is a little different because now we have two terms outside of the parentheses. As far as what I am going to attack first still the parentheses, 3q plus 7. I can't put those two terms together. And so then I'm faced with, well, I've got a 4q and I've got a -2, but once again, I can't put those together. The only thing I can possibly do in this problem is distribute this -2 to the terms within the parentheses so that we can get rid of the parentheses. So on the first step, all I want to do is bring down the 4q. A -2 times a +3. If the signs are different, I know the answer is going to be negative. So that's a -6q. -2 times +7 is, of course, -14. Notice my equal signs are lined up, and I bring down the 12. From here, I can't solve for q until I have a maximum of 2 terms on a side. In other words, we know that we're always trying to work towards a 2-step equation. And if I have more than 2 terms, then I'm not ready to solve. My point is that I can see I'm on the left side of the equation. In other words, I'm on the same side of the equation, and I see a 4q and a -6q. Well, that is just time then to subtract. So I've got 4 minus 6, which is a -2q. You can just put that in your calculator if you don't know 4 minus 6, and then bring down the -14, line up your equal signs, and we have 12. Your problem should look exactly like mine if you look at your paper right now. Now I can see, guess what? I have 2 terms on the left side of the equation, so that means I'm ready to solve for q. To get -2q by itself, I want to add 14 to both sides of the equation. -2q equals 26. Divide through by -2 on both sides. And this is going to be really important. As I keep bringing this down step by step, -2q, make sure that you do that as well. In other words, we want to see that that original was negative, so here it's negative. Why is that important? Because I know that I'm supposed to divide through by the coefficient. The coefficient isn't 2, it's -2. So make sure you pay attention to that little detail. Once I solve, then I end up with q is equal to -13. If I go back and substitute that into my equation, as far as what to tackle first, I can go ahead and combine this 4 and -13. That's going to be a -52. And then -2, 3, and we have to solve what's in parentheses, so that's going to be -39 plus 7 is equal to 12. I need some more room there. Make sure the tendency would be to combine these, but make sure you don't do that because order of operations tells me to multiply before I subtract. So my point is just bring that down. -52 minus 2. -39 plus 7 is -32 is equal to 12. Now I'm faced with, should I multiply first or should I subtract? Well, order of operations tells me to multiply before I subtract. So -2 times -32 is a +64. -52 plus 64, looky there. We are right at a 12. Make sure you box or circle your final answer. And we have another example. This problem on the left is really 2 separate problems, kind of 2 different parts going on. I always want to check to see, can I simplify within parentheses? No, I cannot. I can't put 6 and -2n together. I can't put 6n and -3. So I'm going to distribute. So we want to distribute the 2 to the 6, and we want to distribute the 2 to the -2n. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I should have 12 and -4n. And then on the next part of this equation, I'm going to distribute -3 to both of the terms inside of the parentheses. So I want you to think of that as super glue. It's like distributing -3, not just +3, but -3 to both of those terms. That's going to give me a -18n, and a negative times a negative is a +9, which is equal to 43. From there, then you're going to combine terms that are alike, -4n, -18n. The constants 12 and 9. A constant, of course, is a number that does not have a variable. So I've got a -4n and a -18n. That's going to be a -22n. And then I've got 12 plus 9, which is 21. is equal to 43. And right now I want you to go ahead and pause the video and solve for n. Once you have solved for n, then you can go ahead and check your work. Welcome back. If you finished out this problem, you should have ended up with -1. Be sure that you subtract -21 on both sides of the equation. You end up with -22n is equal to 22, and then divide by the coefficient of -22 on not one, but both sides of the equation. I hope that you enjoyed your lesson on distributive property, combining like terms, and solving two-step equations.